What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with some more news. Join us now as Wrestlelamia analyzes the 28th September edition of the Red Brand and looks at the wildest wrestling news and rumors you need to know, including Backlash against Alexa Bliss, Roman Reigns hates CM Punk and says he needs to be slapped around, what happened to Retribution, why Raw Underground was cancelled, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. As always, we won't waste your time recapping the matches, but we will take a look at the good, the bad, and the downright ugly from last night's show. As always, we start off with the good as number 1, the Legends return. The WWE followed up Clash of Champions nicely by having legends Shawn Michaels, Christian, Big Show, and Ric Flair return after they got revenge on Randy Orton at Clash of Champions. This was a good move as it not only set up the latest segment involving the Legend Killer, but it served as a reminder why all 4 men are important to WWE Champion Drew McIntyre. They have inspired him and mentored him throughout his career, playing a big part in his rise to the top, something which McIntyre values, which leads us to our next segment, number 2, Randy's Revenge. Naturally, the WWE wasn't going to let a feel-good moment like the aforementioned WWE legend celebrating with Drew McIntyre go to waste. Randy Orton showed up and vowed that his feud with Drew McIntyre isn't over until he says it's over, promising hell for McIntyre. Now, in case you missed it, Orton struck later on Raw, taking out the very people McIntyre holds dear in what can only be called a unique way, as he disguised himself as a janitor and invaded the Legends Lounge, turning out the lights, turning into Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell and attacking the Big Show, Christian, Flair and Michaels with a chair. Yeah, the Viper took a page literally right out of Splinter Cell, donning night vision goggles to capitalize on his visionless victims. While some fans may see this as a little hokey, the attack was a clever way to show how determined Orton is for revenge and to force Drew McIntyre to give him another WWE Championship shot. Hokey perhaps, but this is WWE and we've seen more bizarre attacks than this in the past. Let us know what you thought of Randy, Sam Fisher, or Orton's Splinter Cell stealth strategy in our comments down below. Number 3, Keith Lee's push continues. It was great to see Keith Lee in action and doing what he does best, destroying opponents and showing his dominance. The WWE doesn't seem to have any direction for Lee right now, which probably isn't a good sign after a strong push following his debut and subsequent easy victory over Randy Orton, but at least they didn't waste him in another pointless rematch with Drew McIntyre or Randy Orton. However, it was unfortunate to see Andrade chosen as Lee's victim, as it doesn't bode well for Andrade's push. Although a trade to SmackDown could help, but it was a good win for Lee. Now the WWE needs to figure a strong opponent for Lee, and Bobby Lashley seems like the right fit, but it looks like the WWE is still looking to go with Apollo Crews chasing the Almighty for the US Championship. But that was the good. What about the bad is number 1, rematch repetitiveness. Wrestling fans love to see a good rematch after initial rematch, and let's face it, rematches are a big part of wrestling as it gives promoters a chance to utilize 2 wrestlers or 2 teams' familiarity with each other in subsequent matches. However, the WWE's rematch policy is redundant and downright ridiculous, as seen with last night's Raw. Asuka giving Zelina Vega a rematch the night after she beat her at Clash of Champions was a classic WWE taking a pay-per-view match and giving it away for free. Does Vega vs Asuka seem like a classic? Definitely not, but the rematch might have had more to it had the WWE ran an angle to build it up for the following week. Likewise, Randy Orton's matches against Drew McIntyre have seen the WWE Champion win both times, yet it's clearly going with another match at Hell in a Cell. If you're gonna do a feud, you should have some give and take, something we haven't seen with McIntyre vs Orton. Number 2, Aleister Black's new theme. The WWE has had some theme songs become classics with the WWE Universe, ranging from vintage recordings like The Undertaker's theme or DX's theme to more recent ones such as The Fiend's theme. Regrettably, Aleister Black's new theme won't be on the list, and while it's not as bad as Billy Gunn's Ass Man, it's pretty close. The Dutch Destroyer had better hope there's more thought going into his push than what went into his theme music. Number 3, WWE Telenovela. For whatever reason, the WWE's romance storylines always seem to strike a chord with the WWE Universe, dating back to George the Animal Steele's infatuation with Miss Elizabeth to more recent storylines like Otis and Mandy Rose. Perhaps it's the soap opera elements that are inherent to wrestling, or perhaps it's just a sign that wrestling fans are romantics at heart. Whatever the case, the Aaliyah Murphy romance storyline has already jumped the shark as Seth Rollins leaking their DMs is straight out of a low-rent telenovela. As we recently reported, the WWE is looking to load up the WWE network, and for all we know, they may be testing the market for a WWE telenovela. Number 4. Draft dilution. The WWE just announced its 2020 draft, and rather than building anticipation for it, they threw in a random draft last night with SmackDown non-entity Dana Brooke coming to Raw. This is a complete fail on the WWE's part, as it didn't make sense why they would make a trade ahead of their official draft, and even if it did, bringing in Dana Brooke wasn't the game changer that might interest fans in the actual draft. Now, there was nothing downright ugly about last night's Raw. What a disappointing follow-up to a pay-per-view that was pretty decent. The WWE had to reshuffle things thanks to its recent corona cases, but this show seemed like it was thrown together at the last minute, which it probably was, as according to WrestleVotes, the wrestlers didn't know what was going on until an hour before the show. An hour. WWE. But that was the good, the bad, and the downright ugly of last night's Raw. Let's move on to the news. Now, our first bit of news looks at Alexa Bliss closing Twitter after facing some backlash. Now, recently, Alexa Bliss tweeted her support for her real-life ex-boyfriend Murphy's storyline romance with Aaliyah Mysterio. Bliss reposted the storyline DMs between the two with the message, "Honestly, I don't blame him," and hashtag "shoot your shot, bud." As always, some people took offense with Bliss's comments, as some fans are saying that the storyline between a 32-year-old man and a 19-year-old woman is creepy due to the age difference. Bliss then replied, "Try to make one comment supporting my ex and now I'm the bad guy? Do I know her or her age? No, I was trying to be supportive of Murphy. Yes, back off and calm down, people. Just happy Murphy is getting that success he's worked for. That's all, be bothered by something else." She also followed up with, "Absolutely, I agree that I should be held responsible for the storylines my ex-boyfriend receives at work. Anything else I can take care of as well?" Alexa Bliss deleted the first tweet, then briefly locked her Twitter account. Next up, Retribution is out for 2 weeks. Bad news for the WWE's new faction Retribution, as the recent COVID-19 outbreak has reportedly sidelined the entire group. You may recall that NXT and the Performance Center reportedly has some coronavirus infections amongst its performers, leading to absences and quarantines. This became a problem since Retribution's members have had contact with the stars of NXT and the PC trainees. According to Dave Meltzer, regarding Retribution not being cleared to compete at the moment, sources tell me all 5 members tested negative for COVID-19. However, the group's members each have to quarantine themselves for 2 weeks because they came into proximity with someone who tested positive. While this is bad news for Retribution, there is a possible silver lining as the WWE has 2 weeks to retune the Retribution storyline and turn it into something special rather than an afterthought. Next up, RVD and Katie Forbes leave Impact. Rob Van Dam and his girlfriend Katie Forbes are no longer working for Impact Wrestling, with PW Insider reporting that the couple left once their storylines were over. According to the report, RVD was not under contract and was working on a short-term deal. Although RVD revealed he's working with the WWE on some unknown projects, there's been no word on an in-ring return. In fact, as Wrestling News' Andrew Ravens pointed out, RVD's concussion issues are well documented, so there are questions on whether a company like WWE or AEW would be willing to hire him. Next up, Roman Reigns does not like CM Punk, and he mentioned he has to be slapped around. And what would you guys say to a match between Roman Reigns versus CM Punk? Well, that's an idea that was given to the Universal Champion recently, and whilst he said he doesn't like him, he would be down for a match. In an interview with Complex Sports podcast Load Management, he mentioned, "I don't like the guy. I don't know many people who do, but I'm willing to put business first and make really good content if that's the case. He'd probably have to be slapped around a few times in order to get his mind right." Punk has said time and time again he's not willing to get back into the ring, but this marquee feud could at least tempt him for one more run. And finally, why no Raw Underground? Now, if you're wondering what happened to Raw Underground, the Red Brand's unsanctioned fight club that has taken the wrestling world by storm. Okay, we're exaggerating there, and we didn't think many people missed it, but for those who did, Fightful Select is reporting that the WWE chose not to air it because it lacked the usual background players needed for the segments. Apparently, they felt they couldn't tape Raw Underground since many of its extras are Performance Center trainees and they are currently being quarantined. No word on whether the WWE will bring Raw Underground back next week, or if they will simply wait until after the PC wrestlers are out of quarantine. But there you have it guys, the good, the bad and the downright ugly from last night's Raw, as well as the wildest wrestling news stories and rumours you need to know. Be sure to leave your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.